So hello and welcome to a new podcast series on American politics. I'm calling this series A Republic, if you can keep it. Now the origins of this title and its implications will be explored at length in a later episode. For now, I hope that these talks will be of interest both to students of politics and to anyone fascinated, as I am, with American politics. Each episode will use a contemporary problem or theme in the American political firmament and use it as a platform to explore deeper underlying aspects of the Constitution, the three branches of the US government, and the nature of democracy in the United States itself. In this opening episode, I'll be looking at the implications of the recent oral arguments heard by the Supreme Court in Trump versus Anderson. The Supreme Court is being asked to decide whether the Colorado Supreme Court was correct in its earlier decision to hold that former President Donald Trump is constitutionally disqualified from serving as president again, under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The oral arguments themselves were fascinating, and I do encourage you to follow them if you can. But at the Supreme Court, the counsel for Trump contended that Colorado was wrong in deciding that Trump was disqualified. And he went on to say that the decision should be reversed, giving a number of cogent reasons. Before we go any further, let's have a look at the 14th Amendment, Section 3 itself. You'll have a little bit of time to read this in your own time and as I'm speaking. But it's important to set it in some kind of context. The 14th Amendment itself, in the wake of the Civil War, was passed to attempt to reconstruct the country, to rebuild it, to refashion the democracy. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was drafted to prevent former Confederate officers from taking up political positions in the South. As such, it's known as the Disqualification Clause. And this is important. It's arguably meant to be self-executing. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by self-executing? Well, the idea was that a former insurrectionist could be disqualified for their past actions without a trial or a conviction. The drafters seemed to believe that this was like a new qualification. For example, just as a person under the age of 35 can't be president, you couldn't have engaged in an insurrection to hold the office. Now, the 9 justices on the court questioned counsels for Donald Trump and for Colorado. And most experts seem to agree that both the conservative and liberal justices seem very skeptical that the Colorado decision should be allowed to stand. Now, it would take much longer than I have here to summarize the arguments for and against Trump's exclusion from the ballot in Colorado or other states. But to broadly summarize, critics of the Colorado Supreme Court's decision contend that it would be patently undemocratic to exclude from the ballot a clear frontrunner like Donald Trump. After all, in a democracy, shouldn't the people who want to vote for him be allowed to do so. Now, intuitively, we understand this argument, don't we? Independent of your view of Donald Trump, you may think intuitively that he should be allowed to run for office, particularly as he hasn't been charged with the crime of insurrection, let alone convicted of the offence. However, I think that critics of the view that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment should be used to exclude Trump from the ballot are missing the point when they claim it would be undemocratic, or that it would undermine democracy to do so. Sure, it is undemocratic, and here's the thing, that's exactly as it was intended to be. Here's what I think. The authors of the 14th Amendment were worried in the aftermath of the Civil War that voters in the southern states would elect former Confederates into office. So they drafted Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Because they were worried that the people would vote for an insurrectionist. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is, in effect, one of those checks on the popular will of the people that the Constitution contains. Isn't it the case, in fact, that it is the purpose of a written, codified Constitution to place certain principles outside the battlefield of the normal push and pull of democratic competition? Now, of course, when it comes to upholding Colorado's decision to exclude Trump from the presidential ballot, there are serious prudential arguments to make against such a ruling. However, and this is important, one of those arguments against ruling that Trump should be excluded from the ballot is not that it would be undemocratic to do so. After all, the Constitution was designed to constrain aspects of the popular will, to constrain democratic majoritarianism. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, in my view, is one of those provisions. The argument to use it as the drafters intended is undemocratic is to misunderstand the nature of a constitutional republic, where the power does not lie solely in mere majorities. Let's go further. Now, the current Supreme Court in the United States, the 2024 Roberts Supreme Court, is, as you probably know, originalist in its perspective on judicial interpretation. So this is what I think. If the 6 conservative justices on the court are to remain consistent in their philosophical approach to the Constitution, they will, I think, follow the original intent of the authors of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and uphold the Colorado decision to exclude Trump from the ballot. Now, judging from the oral arguments, I very much doubt that they will do this. But if they're going to be true to their constitutional, originalist, philosophical interpretations, that's exactly what they should do. That's all for now. We will see the result of the hearing itself, when the Supreme Court issues its decision. Then let the fun begin. See you next time.